So Battlefield 6 has been out for about 2 weeks now, and rather than rehash what you probably already know in that the multiplayer is solid but still has a fair share of issues, I wanted to focus on something that's been talked about a lot less, and that's the campaign. Now, Battlefield games have never really been known for their single player stories, but Battlefield 6 might just be one of the weakest we've had in a while. Because while there are some okay set pieces and a few fun shooting galleries here and there, most of it feels pretty uninspired and extremely rough around the edges. I was originally planning to do a full review covering everything, you know, multiplayer, portal, the lot, but honestly this section of the game deserves its own video. If you end up enjoying this video, a like really helps me out with the algorithm, and if you enjoy seeing content like this, please consider subscribing. Let's get into it. The campaign is definitely the weakest aspect of Battlefield 6. We kind of knew going into it that it wasn't going to be the best experience. Some content creators got a chance to experience the campaign a few weeks early, and there were some telltale signs straight away that the campaign was unfinished, a bit buggy, and overall wasn't a great experience. So the campaign in Battlefield 6 is a sort of flashback story similar to Battlefield 3. It starts off with an okayish first mission, basically a surprise attack from Pax Armata on a US base within Georgia. The ending scene of this mission was probably the only moving bit of the campaign. That was the only bit where that I felt some emotion, and the very last scene, and I'm wondering if that's potentially tied to sort of the overall development of this, because the actual story is that originally the campaign was going to be developed by Ridgeline Games, and if you're not sure who or what Ridgeline Games were, they were a studio, and at the head of that studio was Marcus Leto, who had co-founded Halo, and he and his team were originally the ones that were supposed to be handling the BF6 narrative experience, but that studio got shut down and he was let go, and I'm wondering if that was potentially why the starting bit of the BF6 campaign was the only potentially emotional bit. If you're unsure what happens, essentially at the start, the main character Murphy, his squad, he essentially has survivor's guilt because all of his squad mates die in this surprise attack from Pax Armata, and he's the only one that manages to survive. And you know, that cutscene is actually pretty good. Overall, like I said, it's probably the only emotional or moving bit of the campaign. I mean, after that, it starts to go downhill fast. So after that surprise attack by Pax Armata, there's immediately a war between Pax Armata and NATO, but in general it's very hard to follow sort of what was going on overall. You know, who are Pax Armata? We're told they're these mercenary group, but there's nothing more to it than that. It's not very clear why exactly they started this global conflict. I mean, there is a sort of loose explanation that I'll come on to later, but you don't really get a sense of what the hell is going on. You know, we're told these countries are leaving NATO, and all the traditional assumptions about who's on whose side is, you know, completely tossed out of the window. But it's never explained then who is on whose side. Where are the front lines? Where are Pax and NATO sort of fighting? I mean, immediately after that Georgia mission, we're immediately thrown into, 6 months later or whatever, and we're invading Gibraltar because Pax Armata are currently attacking it, but it's not clear. So we know the UK is on our side because you meet some UK soldiers during that mission, but the rest of NATO, France, Germany, you don't know where the front lines are. And Pax is supposedly, as we find out sort of later in the campaign, headquartered in Tajikistan, but again, so where are they? How are they able to facilitate this battle? It's never properly explained, and the New York missions just make no sense whatsoever. How have Pax Armata suddenly just arrived in New York out of absolutely nowhere? They've supposedly used shipping containers to smuggle weapons and tanks and trucks and whatnot into America through this shipping company, but again, it's never fully explained. There's a few missions in Egypt that lead up to this, but they just feel so disjointed from the whole story. I mean, comparing I'm going to call it an invasion, but it felt so strange as to what was happening and where everyone was. But comparing the invasion of New York in Battlefield 6 to the New York of the classic Modern Warfare 3 is just like night and day. In Modern Warfare 3, the 2011 game I'm talking about here, not the one that came out a few years ago. We don't talk about that one. But in the 2011 version of Modern Warfare 3, it actually makes sense as to why Russia has invaded the US and New York, and it actually makes sense in terms of how they're there. There's a whole mission where you're destroying their fleet that's outside of New York. In the previous game, you'd recaptured the White House. There was like a full-on actual invasion, and it was very evident that was in the narrative and it could be seen. But in Battlefield 6, they're just there. Pax Armata just turn up, and you're just kind of wondering, well, where's the military? Where's the National Guard? Instead, we're sort of rescuing the president, and he's holed up in some fire station. We're rescuing him, and it's just us, our squad of like 4 people, and like 10 people protecting the president. It's like, where's the army? Like, what? It just doesn't make any sense at all. And the vibes of comparing the Modern Warfare 3 invasion of New York to the invasion, in quotation marks, of Pax Armata in New York, it's so night and day. The vibes in Modern Warfare 3 felt like a war, it felt like a battle, it felt like there was front lines. Whereas in Battlefield 6, it was just so confusing. And arguably what's worse is that I thought we were going to get a similar thing with Battlefield 6. I mean, the original reveal trailer for Battlefield 6 seemed to hint at this, surprise attack, obviously, on New York. But the vibes and the, actual sort of setting with the president at a press conference. Clearly he'd had a bruised hand, it seemed like he'd smacked the wall in frustration, maybe out of the surprise attack or whatever, but none of that was actually in the game. And the scene where there's loads of soldiers and police officers running together as the missiles hit the bridge, while the missile hits the bridge, that other scene just it's not representative of what actually happens within the story. It felt like a complete bait and switch. And that is one thing I will say about DICE's trailer team. They always knock it out of the park, but even a lot of the time it's to the extent of it being almost a borderline lie. I mean, we saw this heavily with 2042's trailers, for God's sake, but now we've got it a little bit in Battlefield 6 with the story. And there are some elements that were in the campaign trailer that aren't in the game altogether, so that also leads me to the fact that perhaps there was a decent chunk of missions or cut content that was originally supposed to tie a lot of these missions and narrative elements together that simply just weren't present in the final game due to time constraints, due to, the shutting down of the original studio who was making it, and all of it has just led to this very disjointed experience that's not really explained to you as the player. So, we know the overall lore isn't anything to write home about, but what about the actual plot points with the characters? Well, unfortunately, it's extremely poor there as well. I just want to preface this by saying this section will contain heavy spoilers, so while the campaign is pretty terrible overall, if you are wanting to play through yourself and not wanting to know the actual plot points with the characters, feel free to skip to the timestamp on screen. Alternatively, you can use the chapters at the bottom of the video. You've got 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Are you gone? Okay, good. I mentioned earlier that this is a flashback story, and the premise is that our squad of characters has raided the house of a woman who's usually our boss in these missions, providing us intel. Think Kate Laswell from Modern Warfare. And there's a bit of an uncertainty of if she's working with the enemy, and our squad is essentially detaining and interrogating her while they fend off a raid from a Pax Armata squad. And during this interrogation, she's essentially speaking to various characters within our squad, and this is where these flashback missions are triggered, and we usually play as the character in question. And in the Gibraltar mission, we're essentially tasked with eliminating a Pax Armata commander, who we later find out is a man named Kincaid. And a little later, our squad leader, Carter, explains that him and Kincaid basically have a history and that they're working together, and Carter had to abandon him or something after thinking he was dead. And at that point, I kind of felt like the writing was on the wall. It was immediately obvious as to what would happen. I mean, given that we had yet to see Carter in any of the non-flashback scenes, and there's some kind of forced tension within the story. And, well, I was right. And maybe even worst of all, as a bit of an insult, they tried to tie it back to Battlefield 3.
About Kincaid. What's the deal? You look like you'd seen a ghost.
You heard of Farouk al-Bashir? Henry Blackburn?
Yeah.
Yo.
There's a whole module on it at the academy.
Yeah, well, I was part of that operation. JSOC. The plausible deniability kind. Border of Iran and Syria. Clear.
Interesting. Tying it back to BF3 there.
What went down?
There was an SAS and Delta joint op, gathering intel on Iranian chemical weapons. Except there was a comm snafu. We got cornered by an IRG battalion and shit went down like you wouldn't believe.
Losses?
Well, the
Too many.
PLR.
US blamed UK and vice versa. It was a whole diplomatic clusterfuck.
And Kincaid?
Troop commander of the SAS unit. Dependable. The kind of guy you'd want by your side. He'd seen it all. Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, Northern Ireland.
What?
Listen, Kincaid went back for his troops and he didn't return. I made the call.
No.
Contact above.
So that's how they're tying us together. Which means this guy's probably going to die and we're going to avenge him. Yep. Who would have seen that coming? And Carter's death scene felt so odd and forced. So, for context, you're evacuating the president by rib boat and you're defending this area from waves of packs while Exfil arrives, and it's your squad and a decent amount of soldiers versus the enemy, and you manage to get the president to safety with a few of your squad mates. Then it's just you, which is Murphy in this case, and Carter, who then attempt to take down Kincaid while the president makes his getaway, and all the other NATO soldiers just seemingly vanish. Well, except one for me for some reason. Who the fuck is that guy? Just one NATO soldier left? What's he looking at? Fuck. Are you right, bro? Oh, don't want to step out by 2 meters. Jesus Christ. Oh, okay. As you go to chase Kincaid, you end up getting jumped by him, and just when Carter steps in to save you, he essentially gets turned on and stabbed by Kincaid. And just before Kincaid can finish you off, the native soldiers that mysteriously vanish then come back just in time for him to leave you alive, because, you know, plot armour. What follows is Carter's death, and as mentioned, it was just the most predictable thing coming, and it just felt so forced. I literally didn't care about the character at all, since there's not really been anything to really connect us with him or make us feel any kind of emotion whatsoever, and I guess just the feeling of how fake the world is, and how stupid the war he died in just emphasises how poorly written this moment feels. Jesus Christ. This is awful. After this, you're transported to Egypt, where you play as some other characters who are literally not important to the story whatsoever. So I'll keep this brief. I was very much looking forward to this mission, given it was a tank mission, but honestly, it just felt rushed and mediocre. And without trying to sound like a disgruntled Battlefield veteran, all I can simply say is Battlefield 3 wins again. The Thunder Run mission is so much better than whatever this was. The next couple missions are arguably the best the game has to offer. You're essentially in Tajikistan working towards attacking this PAX base where Kincaid is located. The first mission has you assaulting these SAM positions that eventually lead you to destroying the dam that we all saw from the trailer, and aside from some questionable gameplay elements like the explosive drone, which was the most boring, pointless thing ever, as well as some odd and out of place character development with this guy getting scared about a sniper that you could kill in 2 seconds because it wasn't scripted or anything like that. Yeah, apart from them, they were generally alright to play. I liked the openness of the SAM level, and the last level had some incredible set pieces. But despite this, the last level included even more story elements that just made no sense. I'm struggling now to even remember how, but Kincaid somehow had missiles which he's going to launch all over continental Europe and presumably the US, but honestly at this point I gave up trying to make anything coherent out of the story. I mean, we're told that PAX is a mercenary faction that has operators from all over the globe, and these mercenaries are supposedly okay with Kincaid essentially nuking all these various countries, many of which will be the birthplace of these hired operatives. It just doesn't make any sense. Regardless, you obviously prevent this from happening and you locate Kincaid in his bunker. There he explains how PAX has the backing of the CIA and that Mills, who's our intel lady that we mentioned at the start, is in on this. After a brief back and forth, the airsoft mask guy kills Kincaid, and then Mills cuts off communication with us and allows NATO forces to bomb the bunker, forcing you to escape before you're killed. And then we're back to where we started at the present with the raid on a house. There she unveils that PAX targeted NATO in Georgia due to Project Valis, which was a technology capable of disabling satellite imagery, which was located on the servers there or something. But I mean, a global war, presumably tens if not hundreds of millions dead, all for this technology, which also meant that the attack on Brooklyn was supposedly orchestrated by the CIA if they fund packs. And then to top it off, Mills at the end made it out as if there's other actors out there, presumably setting up future antagonists. It was just odd. But in the end, Murphy puts it down, and that's it. I was just left with so many questions about the whole thing. What the fuck was that? So yeah, overall, the story of Battlefield 6 isn't anything to write home about. The world's lore feels half-baked, full of gaps, and that leaves you with more questions than answers, and the characters themselves are bland, generic, and ultimately forgettable. But as I've shown throughout this video with some clips, it's not just the storytelling that falls flat, the actual missions themselves often feel janky and unrefined. And, well, I have a lot more clips of this I want to show you. So, the team won't progress because we haven't cleared all the enemies, and there's this guy who's just seemingly stuck on the staircase. Welcome to Battlefield campaigns. Well, he won't shoot at me at all. Interesting. This is some pretty cool level design, by the looks of it.
Transmitters were probably toward the front of the train.
Why does this guy keep jumping? The AI, man, is so fucking broken. This next one might be my favourite. I go into this cutscene with a shotgun that I picked up from the level and just watch what happens to it. Just keep your eyes on the shotgun.
It's online, no idea what it's doing. Then just break the shit out of it. Can do.
What the Okay, what? I had a shotgun equipped, so it acted like a bloody assault rifle. This whole chase sequence felt like it was the pre-alpha, like, demo concept of this mission. Like, I understand in the story there's a lockdown, but, like, it just feels so dead. Like, what? No atmosphere, there's not even any music, like, no military jets overhead, no, like, screams in the... just nothing. Like, it was so weird and odd and clearly just not the final product. Or at least it shouldn't have been the final product. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. It's just very unpolished, buggy, and probably could have done with another, like, 6 to 8 months, maybe even a year's worth of development, to be honest. But that's going to do it for this video. If you did like the video, feel free to give me a like and subscribe. I will have a video about Portal coming out very shortly. I've been messing around with that, and it's certainly a lot more interesting than the campaign. But yeah, aside from that, multiplayer is obviously great, as I'm sure you've already seen. Was I too harsh on Battlefield 6's campaign? Are you a fan of it? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.